of exercise and promoting heart health. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the tackle?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
After all of the grief the Dallas Mavericks went through for trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers, the Mavericks got what they needed to light up their franchise. The Mavericks won the NBA lottery Monday night to get the number one pick in the draft. The Mavericks had only a 1.8% chance to win the number one pick. Duke forward Cooper Flagg, the College Player of the Year, is the consensus number one pick. The NBA draft is June 25th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. 3 teams in the NBA playoffs have 3-1 leads in the best-of-7 semifinals: Minnesota, Indiana, and New York. Indiana can eliminate Cleveland tonight with a win. Cleveland is the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The other Game 5 tonight is Denver at Oklahoma City. That series is tied at 2-2. Wednesday night, a win by the New York Knicks sends them to the Eastern Conference Finals. A win by Minnesota sends them to the finals in the West. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You ready?
Somebody make some noise in this joint.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates its 4th anniversary this year on Juneteenth.
Here we go again.
Hard to believe 4 years has gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
But here we are, still standing, still loving and serving our people as best we can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
To celebrate our 4th anniversary, we have 4 big events, and you're invited to all of them.
She got a lot to say. Let's do this.
Let's get it on.
On Wednesday, June 18th, we go live on C-SPAN for the 2nd consecutive year with our Climate Justice Plus Black Health Symposium. Tavis Smiley will moderate an all-star panel of thinkers and influencers as we continue our vitally important climate justice work.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, talk about.
On Thursday, June 19th, you're invited to join us as we celebrate Juneteenth and our 4th anniversary. There will be plenty of food, fun, great music, good vibes, and all of your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts will be there.
Yeah, man.
Flip the beat. On Saturday, June 21st, there are 2 big events you're invited to attend.
I can't wait to hear it.
This year, KBLA Talk 1580 continues its annual partnership with the Empowerment Congress for a community celebration and dialogue to educate, engage, and empower. This year's theme is Resilience in the Face of Chaos.
Can't wait to see what's up next.
Y'all ain't ready for this.
And new this year is our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium, moderated by Dominique DiPrima, with a luncheon to follow. Dominique will be leading a dialogue with some of the most impactful Black women leaders in Los Angeles, and you're invited to join.
This is it.
All of these events are free, but seating is limited, so you must register in advance at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can find all the details you need about each event.
Check it out.
It's our 4th anniversary, and we would love to celebrate it with you.
I love you guys so much. There's nothing you can do about it.
We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
Thank you for having our black.
Happy anniversary, KBLA.
Love you. Love you.
KBLA Talk 1580 coming to the stage. Yes, this is his theme song. Dr. Gerald Horne is one of our premier scholars in this country. He is a professor at the Moores Chair Professorship of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. He's got a whole bunch of books, which we should all be reading. I'm reading 2 of them at once. If I can do it, you can do it too. He's got a PhD from Columbia, a JD from UC Berkeley, and a BA from Princeton. Dr. Gerald Horne, good morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on. I feel like we need you more than ever right now, Dr. Horne.
Well, we're in a real crisis right now.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, there's the domestic crisis with Mr. Trump threatening to ship what he calls homegrown, that's people like yourself and myself, to a hellhole of a prison in El Salvador. And then, of course, next on the anti-U.S. national agenda is those who have been naturalized, say you were born in Jamaica and now are U.S. citizens, they're going to go back and look at your papers. And if they find any errors, they're going to ship you back to Jamaica. There's the attack on birthright citizenship. That is to say, the idea that if you're born in the United States, you're a national, you're a citizen of the United States. They're threatening that. That's coming before the Supreme Court sooner rather than later. And despite the clear reading and meaning of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution meant to overthrow the ignominious Dred Scott decision of 1857, which said that black people could not be citizens, Mr. Trump is threatening to ignore a Supreme Court ruling that goes against his interests. And then there's international crisis with empty shelves staring us in the face, with UPS laying off 20,000 workers, all because of this ill-considered trade war that Mr. Trump embarked on so-called Liberation Day, April 2nd, 2025.
Yeah, well, you laid that out really well. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and a group of CEOs are hobnobbing with Saudi Arabian officials for lunch during Trump's international, I guess it's his first major international outing here. We got off the golf course. This is, to me, it's like, I know I always ask you for good news, Dr. Horne, but to me, this is even worse than what I imagined under a second Trump regime. It's even more blatant, this oligarchical, money, billionaires first agenda. I mean,
well, then there is the $400 million plane, gifted so-called, from the Persian Gulf monarchy of Qatar. That is to say, it is meant to replace Air Force One, although, as many have pointed out, the plane will have to be stripped to make sure that there are not bugging devices in this plane. And
right.
in any case, the plane, after Mr. Trump presumably leaves office in early 2029, he can use it as his own private flying palace in the sky. But there are so many choices to select from in terms of the worst misdeeds. But rocketing high on my list is the fact that dozens of so-called white South Africans have just arrived in the United States at taxpayer expense. I got a call from a friend in Washington, D.C. A day or two ago who said that he saw this motorcade with these South Africans jetting up Connecticut Avenue right past DuPont Circle. And what's remarkable is that supposedly this is an anti-immigrant president. He's removing temporary protective status from thousands of Haitians who are going to be shipped back to the Caribbean rather shortly. And yet this privileged group from South Africa, who happen to be melanin deficient, are now arriving in the United States and are going to be basically housed and feted on the taxpayers' dime. We're basically paying for this.
Yeah.
This is the outrage of all outrages.
Because, I mean, basically we're rolling out the red carpet for these white folks, and Elon Musk is calling it a genocide, but we're not allowed to say there's a genocide going on in Gaza where actually tens of thousands of people are dead. We have no evidence of any unmelanated farmers dying in South Africa. So how is it a genocide?
Well, as the South African authorities have pointed out, I'm speaking of the African National Congress government, there is a crime problem in South Africa. But the crime problem afflicts folks across race lines, across gender lines. To a degree, the Afrikaners, as they're called, are reaping what they have sowed, in the sense that they are part of the right wing in South Africa who have sought to block wealth redistribution measures. And when you block redistribution of the wealth, you're basically suggesting that people should individually try to grab wealth by any means necessary, which then contributes to the crime problem. So this is just outrageous. I'm going to be very interested to see how the U.S. populace reacts to it.
Yeah, I mean, just what you've laid out right here in the beginning of this hour, it highlights the issue right now. There's so many things going on. The flood the zone. Steve Bannon articulated flooding the zone, so we didn't know where to look first. It seems pretty effective, but at the same time, they're not even trying to hide anything. So it's easy to know what's going on. It's just hard to know what to do about it. I thought, those 49 white South Africans who arrived on yesterday, I thought to myself, because we don't have enough homegrown white supremacists, we need to import them from another country. It seems like that doesn't seem like it's going to end well.
Well, I predict that many of these people will be returning to South Africa sooner rather than later. Because, first of all, I don't think that a red carpet will be rolled out by many of the people they encounter in the streets of Washington, D.C., or in the streets of Texas. I understand they're going to be shipped. Many of them are going to be shipped to Texas, believe it or not, which, as you know, has the largest black population in the United States of America. I dare say...
I didn't know that. I did not know that, actually.
Well, in the 2010 census, it was Georgia. In the 2020 census, it's Texas.
Oh, wow.
But in any case...
So they'll be your neighbors, your new neighbors, Dr. Gerald Horne, or Afrikaners. Yeah.
Yeah, I predict that many of them will have difficulty adjusting to this new U.S. culture. They will be comforted by the fact that there are attacks on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There is an attempt to roll back the gains of the 1960s and 1970s. But at the same time, I don't think that on a day-to-day level, on a person-to-person level, with regard at least to the black people and the progressive people they encounter, they will receive warm embraces.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I wondered about that myself. There's still, even when you talk to people in Africa, their perception of America is still the place with golden streets where everything is, wealthy and easy, and that ain't it. And I think I'm sure even white South Africans have that illusion, and they will have a serious wake-up call on that front. I know you saw, the arrest of my brother by ICE agents. I'm going to talk about that a little bit next hour with Attorney Nana Jomfi, but I'm bringing it up with you because Miles and I were talking off the air, and to me, one of the most troubling things that's happening right now as we try to prioritize what to look at and understand is these masked law enforcement people. Some are ICE, some are Homeland Security. Sometimes they don't identify themselves at all, snatching people up off the street, taking them places, not letting them back into the country when they fly back in. That feels like the most fundamental loss of freedom. If you can just be snatched up by a person who doesn't have to tell you where they're taking you, doesn't have to tell your family or anybody where you're going, or even what agency they work for, and they're wearing a mask, that feels like a huge problem, even bigger than some of these other things you've listed.
Well, there's an explosion of xenophobia and chauvinism in the United States. You see it with regard to tourists trying to come to the United States. Oftentimes they have to have their phones inspected. Oftentimes they find themselves in detention. This has inflicted a staggering blow on the tourism sector of the United States, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm speaking to you, as you know, from Victoria, British Columbia. And there is a general boycott from Canadians with regard to traveling to the United States, which is really hitting Palm Springs, California, for example, which has many of these so-called snowbirds as residents in the time stretching, say, from late October to early April, for example. And not to mention the border towns on this 3,000-mile-long border from the state of Washington all the way to the state of Maine. And so Mr. Trump's policies are backfiring spectacularly, but he has an ace in the hole, because even if the vote totals go against him in November 2026, January 2021 has suggested they don't necessarily accept vote totals. And he has already threatened intermittently to stay in office past January 2029.
Yeah, well, those are a lot of great points. We're talking with Dr. Gerald Horne. There's so much to cover. You're welcome, if you've got a question or comment, to call me at 800-920-1580. Call him, or jump in on YouTube at KBLA 1580. Ask your question, make your comment there. We are unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
You really about to do it? 40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Find what you love, love what you find. A total wine and more. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know, and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Nia.
Hi, Nia. It's Jennifer. Did you know that Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, I work here.
Okay. I was just double checking. Get it?
Because Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Oh, you get me, Nia.
You could say that I double get you.
I guess we've taken it too far.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join the Children, Youth, and Family Collaborative, CYFC, for their 25th annual Foster Youth Awareness Walk on Saturday, May 17th at 8 a.m. at Susan Miller Dorsey High School, 3537 Farmdale Avenue in Los Angeles. This community-centered event brings together advocates, supporters, and youth to raise awareness and resources for foster care programs in the greater Los Angeles area. Please register at Eventbrite CYFC 25th Anniversary Walk. Congratulations to the Children, Youth, and Family Collaborative on their 25th annual Foster Youth Awareness Walk. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Yes, it does. Dr. Gerald Horne is my guest. You mentioned the Qatari 747, which, you know, Trump and others in his administration have said, oh, it's a gift to the Defense Department, except it's not, because it goes to the Trump Museum, as you said, and it goes after, you know, he leaves office. It would go to the Trump Museum, and it's his personal luxury palace, as you cited. But this is something that's even upsetting the MAGA folks. And now Qatar seems like they're trying to back off a little bit and saying, well, you know, maybe you're misunderstanding the plan.
Well, the question for the Qataris is this. Supposedly, they've been a major funder of Hamas. I'm sure that within the royal family, there must be discussion as to whether or not that $400 million could have been better expended. For example, going for relief to the suffering folks of Gaza, who by some measures are on the brink of famine, who are in the process of being ethnically cleansed from their homeland, and with Mr. Trump himself some weeks ago speaking of turning that particular part of historic Palestine into a kind of Riviera on the Mediterranean, which presupposes further ethnic cleansing. So the Qataris do not come out of this smelling like a rose, and it'll be interesting to see how Al Jazeera, which is their personal communications arm, helps to spin this outrage.
Well, I heard that one of their media people saying it was inaccurate that they were going to donate the plane, but that he might. It's confusing what they're saying. Well, maybe he'll get it next week, but the reports are not accurate. But I thought it was interesting that so many of the MAGA folks were mad about it because, they don't stay mad long, it seems, but I'm always happy to see any cracks in the armor.
Well, indeed, Laura Loomer, who, as you know, is this right-wing nut conspiracy theorist. She has claimed the scalp of Mike Waltz, the former national security advisor, kicked upstairs to be United Nations ambassador in New York City. And she has expressed distaste for this particular corrupt bargain, not to mention a number of lawyers and law professors, many of whom did not bathe themselves in glory when they defended these major big law firms cutting deals with the Trump team to give free legal services to causes that supposedly they mutually agree on, but somehow I tend to believe that they'll go to right-wing causes. And so this is not a story that will die overnight. I think we'll be talking about it for some time to come, until Mr. Trump decides to back off and send that plane back to Qatar.
Yeah, it's bad when Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin are pushing back on the president, and of course Laura Loomer, who was reportedly more than friends with the president. Talk to me about what's happening in Gaza, because we had the return of this hostage, and it seems like Israel is indicating that they're planning to pretty much just take over the whole Gaza Strip, to occupy it indefinitely. Trump has said he wants it to be Trump Gaza, but yet I guess Israel was mad that the U.S. went directly to Hamas. What do you make of these machinations?
Well, I won't disagree if you or others suggest that there is a developing rift between Trump and Netanyahu. That is to say, he's flying to Mr. Netanyahu's neighborhood, but not visiting Israel. In fact, he's flying to Saudi Arabia to begin with, whose relations with Israel have cooled dramatically in recent months, at least since October 7, 2023, with the operation of Hamas across the border in Israel. And not to mention the fact that in some ways, Mr. Trump put Netanyahu on the spot when he invited him to the Oval Office some weeks ago, and then made a declaration that he is in favor of resuming negotiations with Iran, which, of course, Israel wants to make war on. And so Israel is in an increasingly isolated position internationally, to be sure, and even domestically, because with Mr. Witkoff, Mr. Trump's negotiator, dealing directly with Hamas, that put pressure on Mr. Netanyahu to do the same thing to rescue the other so-called hostages that Hamas has in its possession.
Let's go to Molly Bell calling us from the city of Compton. Good morning, Molly Bell.
Reparations in memory of our ancestors. God bless morning to you, Dominique, and of course our listeners in chat room, and to you, Dr. Horne. I brought your book, White Supremacy Confronted, back in 2019, and it's an encyclopedia by itself, and it's not easy to read. But Dr. Horne, I thought that the fight for white supremacy would be predicated on gold and diamonds. At least even in your book, that's some of it, because I've only read chapters. So I was just wondering, is that part of it? they're not. I haven't heard them talking about gold or diamonds. Why supremacy that's coming from Africa and Angola and all these countries? Why is it? What do they want? Just to rule the world? I'll listen to your comment off the air. All you prayer warriors out there, you know what you've got to do. You've got to keep fasting. You've got to keep praying because the struggle continues always. To God be the glory. Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you, Molly Bell.
Well, if I understand the question, Molly Bell is asking about the primacy of gold and diamonds. And certainly with regard to gold, the price of an ounce of gold is going through the roof. And it has a lot to do with the lack of confidence in the dollar, which was ignited by Mr. Trump's ill-advised trade war, which led to a flight from all U.S. assets, including stocks and bonds, and, of course, the dollar itself. And as you know, South Africa is a major repository of gold. South Africa is a major repository, or at least Southern Africa, particularly Botswana, is a major repository of diamonds. And so control of these natural resources is at issue with regard to the United States, with regard to its comrades in the North Atlantic community. And that stretches all the way north to Niger, which is a major repository of uranium necessary for not only nuclear weapons, but the powering of electricity in France. Mali, a comrade of Niger, also has gold. And this is at issue. And I assume that's what Molly Bell was referring to.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's also asking in a broader sense, what do, global white supremacists, what do these, corporate leaders and Western nations want? Do they want just gold and diamonds, or do they want world domination when you look at, incursions into Africa and other countries?
Well, I think they're inextricably tied together.
Yeah.
That is to say, as one put it with regard to the golden rule, he who has the gold makes the rules. And therefore, having a stranglehold on gold leads inevitably to world domination. But these white supremacists have a real problem right now because somehow they've allowed China to get into the passing lane. And you can say many things about China, but it's difficult to see the Chinese Communist Party endorsing white supremacy in the 21st century.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great point. And you say in the passing lane, are you talking about because of their own expansion into Africa and other parts? Are you talking about the ridiculously stupid trade war, which is, even though we have the announcement of a deal, doesn't seem to be at all over?
Well, what we're living through right now is a real historic turning point because Mr. Trump was eyeball to eyeball with the Chinese Communist Party. He just blinked. And this helps to ensure, on the one hand, that there will not be empty shelves at Christmas time, disappointing Johnny and Jennifer and many others, but also it helps to ensure that the Chinese manufacturing engine, which now produces more than the United States and its North Atlantic allies combined, will continue to motor on. And as we speak, leaders from South America and the Caribbean are in Beijing meeting with the Chinese Communist Party leadership. That includes President Petro of Colombia, President Lula da Silva of Brazil, not to mention foreign ministers of a number of Caribbean nations. At the same time, there was a New York Times story a few days ago that suggests that the United States is about to close many of its consulates and embassies in Africa. Now, how they plan to dominate Africa with all its resources without having its staff on the ground, it escapes me.
Dr. Gerald Horne is our guest, and appreciate the call, Molly Bell. We've got news, traffic, and sports right now. Then the conversation continues exclusively right here.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Democrats aren't the only ones raising concerns about Qatar offering a $400 million luxury jet to President Trump. GOP Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky says Trump has no business accepting a gift like that.
The Constitution in Article 2 talks about the president can't take emoluments or gifts from foreign leaders. There is a provision in the Constitution that says you can't do this.
Speaking from the White House Monday, President Trump said turning down a free jumbo jet would be stupid. An internal poll shows Newark, New Jersey Mayor Ras Baraka trailing Representative Mike Sherrill by 4 points in the Democratic governor's race after his arrest by ICE. Reportedly, there are concerns within the Democratic Party about Baraka's liberalism. And the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is terminating Judge Karen Ortiz for resisting White House directives, including Trump's executive order on gender identity. Ortiz criticized the agency's actions and plans to fight her termination. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
After all of the grief the Dallas Mavericks went through for trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers, the Mavericks got what they needed to light up their franchise. The Mavericks won the NBA lottery Monday night to get the number 1 pick in the draft. The Mavericks had only a 1.8% chance to win the number 1 pick. Duke forward Cooper Flagg, the College Player of the Year, is the consensus number 1 pick. The NBA draft is June 25th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. 3 teams in the NBA playoffs have 3-1 leads in the best-of-7 semifinals: Minnesota, Indiana, and New York. Indiana can eliminate Cleveland tonight with a win. Cleveland is the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. The other Game 5 tonight is Denver at Oklahoma City. That series is tied at 2-2. Wednesday night, a win by the New York Knicks sends them to the Eastern Conference Finals. A win by Minnesota sends them to the finals in the West. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I feel so alone.
I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like it inside.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for starting your morning off with a voice that speaks truth to power and the powerless, getting to the heart of what matters most in our community. This is where authentic conversation meets real action. From breaking news and politics to culture and community solutions, this is where you hear perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. This is where we come together, get informed, and make change happen. You're inside First Things First with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, sunshine. You make my day.
KBLA Talk 1580 and the California Black Chamber of Commerce invite you to the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. Get certified and register as a new bidder. Sell products and services to the state. Learn about pre-bid events and more. And it's all free. All you have to do is sign up at www.calbcc.org. That's www.calbcc.org. Registration Registration for the Small Business Development Workshop, How to Do Business with California Government, begins at 9 a.m. and the workshop concludes at 1 p.m. on Thursday, May 15th at Victory Park in Pasadena, 2575 Paloma Street. This is a community call to action from the California Black Chamber of Commerce and KBLA Talk 1580.
Find what you love, love what you find. A total wine and more. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low. It just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
We're talking with Dr. Gerald Horne. Dr. Horne, before, I always feel like at the very end of the show, I'm going, get his book, do this, he's going to be here, this, that, blah, blah, blah. So let's do that now. What is going on with your book publishing, touring, and any other events that you're working on?
As you probably know, I have a book dropping in a few days entitled The Capital of Slavery, Washington, D.C., 1800 to 1865. Those of you who saw the film a few years ago, 12 Years a Slave, might recall that the free black man Solomon Northup, when he found himself enslaved in Louisiana, it came as a result of an inadvertent trip to Washington, D.C., which was a major slave trading city. And it's ironic that within hollering distance of the Capitol and of the White House, where you had representatives prattling about freedom and liberty, you had enslaved Africans basically being sold within spitting distance. So that'll drop in a few days. Now, of course, as you know, I'm really touting this CARICOM African Union Summit, September 2025 in Ethiopia. And my understanding is, at least I've received communication from friends in Berkeley, Oakland, that they're trying to organize a California delegation. And I think that that'll probably be emulated from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And the major agenda item, as you know, is reparations. But inevitably, it seems to me that on the agenda will be what to do about this Trump regime, which is wreaking havoc on black people, be they in Africa or in North America. And with the latest outrage being this red carpet being rolled out for these so-called Afrikaners who landed in Washington just the other day.
Yeah, and it's ironic that the D.C. reparations project has become so controversial and such a flashpoint in the middle of your book giving us the long history of slave trading right exactly there, and the fact that it still remains disenfranchised in terms of statehood.
Well, part of an issue that has not been discussed fully since Mr. Trump was inaugurated is the attack on Black Washington. The latest bit of evidence in that regard is the Washington Commanders football team is going to receive a massive payout from the city government of Washington, D.C. under Mayor Bowser. And this is going to contribute to gentrification. That is to say, driving black people out of Washington, which I would say is a long-term goal of the right wing. In fact, there has been talk of moving more federal offices, those that are not fed through the wood chipper, as Mr. Elon Musk put it, but moving more federal offices to Pueblo, Colorado, to Idaho, et cetera, to other areas, which will then force those black workers who have not been laid off to perhaps move to these uncomfortable climates, such as Idaho, which has the largest and most vibrant white supremacist movement in the United States of America.
Oh, boy. It's just, it really is kind of overwhelming. But you're talking about the reparations summit in Ethiopia in September. Can I broadcast from there? I want to be live.
Oh, I wholly encourage it.
I want to go live from there. Not just Freedman Friday, but the whole week. When we look at solutions and facing this era of the United States, it is, you said, a domestic and an international crisis. And what kinds of things would you think, would be considered? I mean, I'll give you an example what I'm thinking of. A lot of people are finding hope and some inspiration from the Sahel states, what's happening in West Africa, the fact they're kicking the French out for the most part. And I think, we had a days at the end of, I think it was the end of April and the beginning of May, where we had some protest in support of what they're doing. And I saw that, they're kind of getting Vladimir Putin now to push back and say you don't get to dethrone, or not dethrone, you don't get to overthrow or do regime change in these West African states. Are we talking about that kind of strategy, chess playing, or are we talking about more kind of conciliatory measures?
Well, I would not denigrate conciliatory measures, but I'm not sure if that is sufficient to dig ourselves out of this deep hole in which we find ourselves. Certainly, there is inspiration being provided by Burkina Faso and their leader, Ibrahim Traoré, who, as you know, was just in Moscow a few days ago with Lula of Brazil, Xi of China, and, of course, Putin, Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, Maduro of Venezuela, Diaz-Canel of Cuba, etc. He surprised many when he began to speak in Russian. I wasn't even aware of the fact that he knew that he was familiar with that language. But the problem for Burkina Faso and their comrades in Niger and Mali is that there are concerted efforts to overthrow them. And in fact, I think they're going to accelerate after Mr. Trump returns from the United Arab Emirates, because the UAE is one of the major funders of these religious zealots who control a good deal of the territory in the Sahel states and bid fair to overthrow each and every one of those regimes. And this has caused the Sahel states to enter into what I consider to be uncomfortable alliances. For example, they just cut a deal with Morocco, which is a major friend of both France and the United States, but they needed an outlet to the sea because they don't have an outlet to the sea. However, by cutting that deal, they alienated Morocco's antagonists. Speaking of Algeria, they outraged Polisario, which is the liberation movement in Western Sahara, which Morocco illicitly controls Western Sahara. So these regimes, although they're supplying inspiration, and I salute that, they're not out of the woods by any means.
Yeah, well, I mean, those protests were saying you can't just overthrow the government in Burkina Faso, but our government and Western nations have a long track record of doing exactly that, not just in West Africa, but throughout the continent. At the same time, that's why I think it was a little not surprising, but confusing for some to see Putin saying, well, you don't get to overthrow the government in Burkina Faso as long as I'm at the helm, because it does seem like Putin has an outsized influence with this administration. But you're saying that doesn't matter. It's likely they will still move on this alliance of West African states who are trying to kick out the French.
Oh, I'm afraid so. I mean, just look at this one factoid. Before the new regime came to power in Niger, the government, the pre-military regime government, was selling their most valuable assets, speaking of uranium, to France for a pittance, helping to power, as we said, electricity. But the new regime increased the price of uranium by about 1,000%. And that's going to have to come out of the pockets of Paris. So obviously they're not very happy about that. Although, of course, in Niamey, Niger, they're exhilarated about this. But it's those sorts of economic issues that puts pressure on these regimes, because ultimately that's what's at stake. That is to say, who is going to control the resources of resource-rich Africa? Will it be governments that have popular support, or will it be the neo-colonial vampires like France?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking at this article in Reuters and in many of our other mainstream media, Dr. Gerald Horne, and they say they always refer to these West African governments as juntas, and that they've taken control by coups, and they talk about them in a manner that makes them seem more dangerous than the very Islamic militant groups that are kidnapping and killing people in Africa, which seems counterintuitive because the United States claims that those are terrorists that we want to fight, but yet they seem to be taking the side of those so-called terrorists against these African, what they're calling juntas. What do you explain that? Break that down, if you would.
Well, you are correct. There is an objective alliance between these religious zealots and the United Arab Emirates, for example, and their backers in Washington, D.C. But this is nothing new. I mean, look at Afghanistan, for example. That is to say, before September 2001, September 11, 2001, you had the United States an objective alliance with the Taliban. And then the Taliban was said to have opened its doors to al-Qaeda, which led to the attacks on New York and Washington. Supposedly the United States then turned on the Taliban. But intermittently, over the years, there have been alliances between these religious zealots, these so-called religious fundamentalists, and Washington, because they're good fighters, and they will bend the knee to Washington ultimately, and certainly they won't necessarily object to the uranium of Niger being sold to France for a pittance.
Well, it's sad, but I feel like it doesn't seem like Africa and the world is just going to take this lying down.
Well, that's for sure. That's the import of the Sahel States Alliance. But of course, as I said, they're hardly out of the woods. Nigeria, which is the major dynamo of the economic community of West African states, which once included the Sahel states, is not necessarily friendly to the Sahel states. Likewise, you can say the same for Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, whose 83-year-old leader, Mr. Ouattara, is about to run for a third term, even though supposedly the Constitution forbids it. Even in Senegal, where we had thought that the incoming regime of President Faye would lead Senegal to the left, thus far, many of us have been disappointed. They have not broken from the French control of their currency, and they have not entered into warmer relations, shall we say, with the Sahel states.
Dr. Gerald Horne is our guest, and yes, you're free to call if you got a question or comment, 800-920-1580. I'm Dominique DiPrima for Unapologetically Outspoken, Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least like to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions.
The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth.
Hello, Joe, you're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
Author, scholar, Dr. Gerald Horne is our guest. You can also find him on YouTube. He's got a lot of lectures there. You want to catch up on a few things. And, of course, The Capital of Slavery, Washington, D.C. That's dropping in the next few days. His latest book. Let's go to Derek calling us from Colorado. Good morning, Derek.
I'll be real quick, okay, because I know we don't have too much time. Anyway, Gerald Horne, I'll make one. I have one question, and I have two comments. The first one is going to be, what did you hear they're going to be in Pueblo, Colorado? And the other comment is that, by the way, Pueblo, Colorado is about 35 miles from Fort Carson, which is the Army base, and Peterson Air Force Base. There's quite a number of black people who were, I think, 60% of Fort Carson is black. And then also, there's a person around the corner from where I live. She's from Mali, and she was just talking about this situation they were having with the French. And she says they had a time, and it got to be pretty messy, she said, because she's lost some people in her family fighting these, what do they call them, Muslim terrorists. She's Muslim herself. And she was just saying that also they had an election in Mali where they wanted to convert it to Islamic State. She said 97% of the people voted against it because she was convinced that they went through. She, as a woman, would not have any rights at all.
So, Derek, you just threw in like the kitchen sink. It's a whole bunch of stuff to answer. But can you just say the first thing you said? Because I wasn't clear on the question.
No, the first question is, what did you hear they were going to go to Pueblo, Colorado?
Oh, and, I gotcha. Got it. Thank you. Dr. Horne.
Well, first of all, as I understand it, the federal agency known as the Bureau of Land Management is already in Colorado. I know for a fact that the Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs. And so there already are a number of federal facilities in that particular state. But what I'm suggesting is that there has been a concerted effort for decades to denude Washington, D.C. of a number of federal agencies because there are those in the Republican Party who are uncomfortable with this idea of Chocolate City. I talk about that in length in my book, Revolting Capital, Racism and Radicalism in Washington, D.C., which goes from the beginning of the 19th century up into a decade or so ago.
I think what he was talking about concerning West Africa, we kind of covered it, but I don't know if you want to follow up on what he was talking about.
Well, the regime in power in Bamako is, needless to say, hotly opposed to this idea of a so-called Islamic State. That's why they're at war with the religious fundamentalists. And he suggested, if I'm not mistaken, that there was a referendum held by religious zealots, which, of course, would necessarily be opposed by many, including his neighbor, who he says is a woman whose rights inevitably would be circumscribed if these zealots came to power.
It's, yeah, I mean, and it's weird. I've never been to Mali. I've never been to Burkina Faso, the Ivory Coast, none of those. I've been to Ghana twice, and I've been to Senegal once. And what I've seen within those countries is that there's a huge Muslim African population that lives peacefully with Christians and does not have any of what he was calling Muslim terrorists. I don't think that's really fair. It's more of a, an extremist kind of agenda because, even in Tanzania, they're very, very Muslim. They're African Muslims. They're not bothering anyone. They're practicing their spiritual beliefs and not trying to impose them on others. So these groups that we're talking about are really offshoots of groups like Al-Qaeda, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think what we need to be concerned about is the external interference, the outside interference, particularly from the United Arab Emirates, which will be hosting the U.S. president within a day or two. They are pouring so much money into Africa. And, of course, the fact that Qatar can give a $400 million plane to Mr. Trump bespeaks how much money they have to throw around.
Yeah, it's a great point. I just want to make sure people are clear that, these are different cultures and totally different ways of being politically and ways of being in the world, as far as my own personal experience. Dr. Gerald Horne, I can hear the birds chirping. I can hear the atmosphere. You have gone far away from us. Do you think that that's going to be a reality? I mean, you talked about a regional passport. That's African for Africans. I would love to see a regional passport for African Americans in the motherland. Maybe they can talk about that at the conference in September. But realistically, do you think that's something that we're going to be seeing more of?
I think it's inevitable that at some point in the 21st century that black people in the United States are going to be looking elsewhere because, as you know, I'm speaking to you right now from British Columbia in Canada, 1,200 miles north of Los Angeles. And I would not paint this place as a paradise, but it's no question that you're treated better as a black person in British Columbia than you are in Los Angeles, for example. And at a certain point, as the economy continues to deteriorate in the United States of America, as the crisis continues to deepen, as police killings continue to escalate, I think black people are going to be looking for alternatives and options, which would include, of course, seeking another homeland and perhaps seeking another passport as well.
Yeah, I think that's happening already among my friends. I hope we're being realistic and understanding that you got to bring your own money, bring your own job, come with a plan. You're not going to land in Africa and just get a job.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, but on the other hand, as you know, you say you've been to Ghana. There's a growing community of black Americans in Ghana, in Southern Africa, in Tanzania, in Ethiopia. And I think that those communities are destined and bound to grow by leaps and bounds.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even in the Gambia, there's a Nation of Islam community there, big community. I didn't realize before I went there. Dr. Horne, we got a little over a minute. What do you want to leave us with?
Well, I'd like to reiterate this conference in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. And I hope that KBLA and Dominique DiPrima are really seriously considering sending a team there, because I think that our audience would be quite interested in hearing what's going on there. And I think it would be an attempt to forge Pan-African unity at a level that we have not seen perhaps since 1945.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. I hope I can go. I would love to. Addis is beautiful. And they have some of the best food in the known world, at least as far as my taste buds are concerned. I could go be a chubby Ethiopian for sure. But I'm glad you'll be there at least, because it seems that in spite of this administration, reparations continues to march on.
Oh, absolutely. Particularly in Washington, D.C., there is... Recall that slavery was abolished in Washington, D.C. in 1862 before the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. And a precedent was set because the enslavers in Washington received reparations, so-called, for their lost property. And obviously that sets a precedent for the descendants of the enslaved Africans in Washington, D.C., likewise to receive reparations. So this movement is not going away anytime soon.
Dr. Gerald Horne, thank you so much for joining us today. I always appreciate you.
Thank you for inviting me.
We'll be speaking with attorney Nana Jamfi. I can't wait to get her take about the arrest of my brother and not just my brother, the mayor of Newark, New Jersey, but arrests everywhere of people by masked people. Law enforcement? Are you law enforcement? How do we know that? Like, what is happening? KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Democrats aren't the only ones raising concerns about Qatar offering a $400 million luxury jet to President Trump. GOP Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky says Trump has no business accepting a gift like that.
The Constitution in Article 2 talks about the president can't take emoluments or gifts from foreign leaders. There is a provision in the Constitution that says you can't do this.
Speaking from the White House Monday, President Trump said turning down a free jumbo jet would be stupid. An internal poll shows Newark, New Jersey Mayor Ras Baraka trailing Representative Mike Sherrill by 4 points in the Democratic governor's race after his arrest by ICE. Reportedly, there are concerns within the Democratic Party about Baraka's liberalism. And the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is terminating Judge Karen Ortiz for resisting White House directives, including Trump's executive order on gender identity. Ortiz criticized the agency's actions and plans to fight her termination. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. Their future in a single moment. See how far your support